d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, knight f3, short castle, bishop e2, e5. Maybe this is the main fear what the black player usually have in the King's Indian defense when they are playing the main lines in the classical system. They always, I myself, I even experienced this. I won a few games, but I also made a few draws with black against inferior players. Sometimes even that's why I choose the lines with knight bd7, then e5. But of course, e5 we have to play, we have to know it, and the fear is to be equalized by white after d5. Actually, nowadays, draw is not such a bad result anyway, and we should allow it, otherwise we will not reach to those interesting positions we will examine later. So this d5 we have to know. It's nothing complicated, and still if you are better player, you can have chances to win. So d5, d5, so-called exchange variation in the classical lines. Queen d8, rook d8, bishop g5. Before I was playing rook f8, this suggestion by Laka. It's also an interesting line. I think I have it in my books and my DVDs. But rook e8, of course, it's also very solid, and maybe it's the best reply by black. It's the easiest way to answer this bishop g5, because if he goes here long castle, then we just go knight a6, the knight is directed to c5. Only question is what to do with the square d5. So if he goes knight e1, there is no issues. We just will play knight c5, f3, knight e6. Now we attack the bishop, but also knight has in mind very nice square on d4. Bishop e3. From our part, we will protect the square d5 by the pawn. But he doesn't have a pawn to protect his square d4. So potentially we can have advantage here. Let's say knight c2. How to develop b6, rook t2, bishop b7, just simple way. Rook hd1. And now another extremely typical idea to bring the bishop to this diagonal. First of all, to control d6 square, but also most important is to exchange the black square bishop and then to try to put somebody on d4. I mean, this plans already can a black advantage. So instead of knight e1, he might try to take the pawn on e5. There is some tactical backgrounds for this. So we don't take, of course, on because we don't take this knight because we are not forced, and chess is not forced to take. So we play knight c5 here first. After bishop f6, bishop f6, f4. First we play c6, and only after we take on e5 and later after e5 we take on e5 with the rook. So I mean we will have just this weak pawn on e4. Let's check another line after rook e8, rook d1 if he goes immediately. Then knight a6 again, and the plan is the same. Put the knight to a6, the pawn to c6. Knight will come either to c7, either to c5, to e6. This is more or less our idea. Let's say if he stops with knight b3, then as I said, we go knight c7, knight e6, bishop e3, b6. More or less same ideas. One more point which is important for us to know. For example, on c5 here, he can hit back with knight f4. And we can overtake the initiative. The main line after rook e8 is knight d5. And then we should take, because he attacked on f6 and on c7. cd5 and undermine this pawn on d5, the strong pawn, by trying to exchange it to c6. So now he has actually a choice. Either he allows us to take the pawn, but then he will have a weak pawn on d5, or if he takes, then he develops our pieces. First we check d6. In the beginning it looks like strong pawn, but later we realize that this pawn is condemned to be eaten. let's say bishop e3, bishop e6, long castle. Already we can even take the pawn on a2. So this d6 is pointless. Long castle immediately. It would be. Here we have two choices. Both are very good. f6 and h6. Let's check h6. Bishop h4. g5. Bishop g3. cd5. Bishop b5. Knight c6. ed5. So in this case, we know how to get rid of this pin by typical motive, which is a6. If he will go bishop a4, we will continue with b5. So that's why after a6 he goes bishop e2. We go knight a7. Strange enough, there is no better square, but it's good enough. And then, as we said, this pawn is whipped, and we will finish development, or bishop d7 or bishop f5 is better play for black. So on c6, again, he has to bring the bishop to c4, but it's already a waste of time, first of all. And this bishop on d5 will not be very comfortable, neither. After cd5, bishop d5, I would suggest you this knight d7. From here we have two threats, two ideas. One is to jump to c5 and to bring bishop to e6. This is one idea. And another idea is to, after we will send back the bishop h6 with the move h6, to play knight f6 and to attack both pawn on e4 and bishop d5, so he cannot avoid the exchange. So let's say, for example, if rook c1, then h6, bishop e3, knight f6, already advantage for black. If king e2 and short castle just the same, h6 and knight f6. So knight d2, also h6, bishop e3, knight f6, bishop b3. In this case, the pawn is protected already by the knight. That's an improvement for white comparing with the previous lines. That's why we can say that the position is just equal after bishop d7, f3. Bishop has nothing to do on g7, so we improve. We take under control the squares on the queen side by bishop f8, king e2, king g7. Okay, the position is absolutely equal. So let's say a few words about this exchange variation in the classical system of the King's Indian defense. I must say that we have to remember, first of all, that the first move, rook e8, shouldn't be afraid of kind of bishop takes f6, knight d5, because we have bishop d8, or knight d5 immediately, because take, and c6 immediately, exercising a pressure on d5. And the lines when after rook e8 he is trying to play long castle or something like this, similar, like quiet play, then our main idea would be knight a6, c6, knight c5, knight e6, and fighting for the d4 square. The bishop usually we can develop to b6, bishop b7.